Basically since COVID, just so you know, we always count the people who are watching, and we always have probably 20 or 30 people who watch every week.
Oh, really? That
Oh yeah,
counts?
yeah, yeah. I mean that's the challenge of this is like because we don't do it on Zoom. Like Josh in East Hampton, they put a giant TV screen, and you can see the people who are on Zoom for the people who are in the room.
Oh, they do all the little.
They do, yeah, yeah. And that to me was just one step too far. I just whatever that is, like the idea of like me being up here in like a giant screen being
Yeah,
just felt kind of
it's
weird.
too commercial.
Right, but I can see after the service, you can see how many people, you can see how long they watched for, and I always joke actually that I always know when Neil is watching because it can show you the ISP number. It doesn't tell you it's Neil, but I can see on a map where the people are watching all over the world. So like during the holidays, when Kevin was here, his now wife, his fiance Ben, is from Australia. So for the holidays, once I like looked at it, I saw these like blips in Australia. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Explain that family was watching and stuff. But like back in the day though, before COVID, it doesn't affect the Friday nights so much other than saying Kaddish and the bar food. Those are like parts of the service you generally wouldn't do. But Saturday mornings, we on the rare occasion where we didn't get 10, we wouldn't read Torah. And I usually, or I would like chant it from a piece of paper and say read the Torah out and stuff like that.
Rabbi, Shabbat Shalom. You're inside
I was gonna say because of beer. That's well, yes, indeed.
You didn't find it?
waiting for my friend, and I have a feeling she's gonna have a spot that she wants to sit. So I'm always.
I don't think there will be any concern about you can
Right. Well, I always feel like if I
sit on the bema if you want to. That's.
Well, I always feel like if I sit down first, there's certain people who are like, no, we have to sit.
You know what? No, there are a couple of people more around the holidays than anything else, but there are a couple of people who are very consistent in that way. My family's tradition generally is to sit in the last row. It's that was always my dad's move is just sit in the last row.
My grandpa was always
In the front row, yeah. Right. There's front row people, there's last row people. Some people actually will sit in the row where the memorial board has their family members' names. That is occasionally a thing.
The Musar teachings, they say it's a good thing to sit in your specific space.
I'm like that.
Place.
Well, I have a yoga teacher who says when everyone starts the class, everyone goes in the same spot. She says, "You move something else." And everybody resist it.
Right.
She says, if you can't move in the yoga studio, you're gonna have problems. So this is an easy thing to try this
I'm sorry, I just put on
I was sitting in the same, I was sitting in this place.
Well, I gotta say, a different perspective sometimes.
They say in Musar, you don't want to take too much space.
Yes.
No.
It's
No guilt. It's no guilt.
It's a wonderful. You ever want to do it? Let me know right now.
If somebody told me right now,
My
be in my home with nobody else in it for even 24 hours,
every other Monday
I'd
night.
probably be great. I love my family here,
Oh,
but
okay.
there is a
If
certain
you like, I can give you
certain calm.
information later. And then, as there are books that we read from,
Right.
that you can get on Amazon. But I mean, it's,
But you
you're
know-
learning all the different Jewish traits.
I'll tell you when we get to that part.
Just in humility.
And what was your connection to Moses Pfeiffer?
Yeah, well, I'll if you want to,
He was my professor in grad school.
No kidding. Oh wow, that must have been an experience.
Steve Clark?
No,
I
no.
was so with you, but
So
you're
I
just
was
too
gonna ask
close.
about
Want to sit here?
why do I remember?
He was very active in this temple and the conservative temple.
That's what it is. But when was he active in this temple?
I don't think we knew.
I don't think so, right? But no, but that's why I remember this. Yeah.
I was just saying, you guys
becomes 6 o'clock very quickly. Right. All right. Shabbat shalom, everyone. And I think Jen may be somewhere else at the moment, so we asked her to light the candles. We're going to give her a second to come back, but it gives an opportunity certainly to acknowledge a lot of things happening this week. Things on a pretty grand scale, some things hopeful, some things less hopeful, some things more personal to our community here. I'll start with that piece of it, which I don't know if everybody got the announcement. Some of you may not have known him, but a wonderful man, Morris Kramer, passed away this week. So it's not Shabbos, and his funeral hasn't taken place yet. Shabbos is not the time to eulogize. I'm going to speak at the funeral on Sunday. But for those that didn't know him, he was a remarkable, unique human being. And other than this gentleman sitting in the third row, uniquely responsible for me being your rabbi here. So very tough. Even, with some expectation that wasn't far off, it was tough for sure. And some other things, as I said, on a national level, I'll talk about a little bit later in my sermon for sure. But also, again, one least small bit of hopefulness from Israel and seeing, what at least so far is a ceasefire that is holding, the return of an initial set of 3 hostages from what we expect, even though there are a couple complications with this next round of release, but hopefully that will go through as well, and that will continue on. So, it's again in a world in which, it's constantly kind of looking backwards and forwards, looking for even the smallest hopeful elements. That for me, obviously, is something that I think all of us, we can breathe a little bit, but, it's going to be a perilous, again, weeks, months ahead, and we have to, remain, again, praying for and hoping for and working for, and Beth, we didn't finish the conversation we began 30 seconds ago, but, there is a sort of, a lot of feeling and a feeling that we need to be doing, and, that's a big part of Shabbat is sometimes, right, it's the part of the week where we stop doing, and it gives us space to be thinking and thinking very deeply, and that's really, again, what our community is about here and what our Shabbat experience is about here. So, always very grateful. And I have to say, the pessimist, or maybe not pessimist, but the cynic in me, 20 minutes before the service, and Linda and I are the only people here, we say, we're going to be alone this Shabbat. And somehow or another, the magic of Shabbos changes that math, changes that math as it goes. Oh, don't. As if we're running out of space, come on, that's really. No, it is certainly not that. It is certainly not. It's a beautiful coat. No, you're lighting candles in a second, Jen. Don't go, no. This is what happens. You see, I give Neil a compliment, and the next thing you know, that's it. Susan, how are you? Shabbat shalom. Yeah, does everybody? No, but we marvel at your strength and your grace. That is, that is all we will say. But I think as we wait for Jen to come back, this is a good opportunity for, I think, all of us, again, coming from a mixture of experiences this week and knowing, Kabbalat Shabbat is giving us an opportunity to really process that week. Perhaps we'll just take a second and, think to yourselves where you're at, give yourself a moment of reflection. And then when Jen comes in, we'll light our Shabbat candles again, lighting our 2 sets here. One for us in Sag Harbor, the other for the hostages who still remain in Gaza. And we hope, again, each week, we'll have a chance, for them to.
In the New York Times, there was an article about the terrorists parading.
Yeah, no, I know. Look,
this is some of the unique challenge of living in a time in which cameras are everywhere, right? And there are things that we see that you can't kind of unsee. What I will say of a moment like that, right, you can look at an image, you can look at a video of that, and you can take a lot of different things away. One of which is horror, but another which is to deeply admire the courage of those women. I in any circumstance, I cannot even begin to imagine what it is to be in a throng of people, all chanting and screaming around you in any circumstance, let alone that one. Let alone in a circumstance where you haven't seen the sunlight, potentially in months. They are remarkable people, and I'm sorry, they were remarkable people before October 7th, I am sure. But after that experience, it's beyond words. It's really beyond words. So I think we need a little bit of light, I think, in this Shabbat. And Jen, your timing is perfect. I was going to light and bless our candles. Our blessing is found on page 120. And Jen, do you want me to do the actual lighting for me? Oh, Gail, we have to get Gail found a new magical torch, which is less crazy than these. Amen. Thank you, Jen. And we'll turn together to page 130 as we begin Kabbalat Shabbat, the very, very top of the page, again, page 130. Lechu ne'anena, lechu ne'anena, lechu ne'anena l'Adonai. Lechu ne'anena, lechu ne'anena, lechu ne'anena l'Adonai. Naria, naria, letzori, shenu nekad mafana betoda. Naria, naria, letzori, shenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechu ne'anena, lechu ne'anena, lechu ne'anena l'Adonai. Lechu ne'anena, lechu ne'anena, lechu ne'anena l'Adonai. We're now on page 131. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai, shiru shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato. Shiru l'Adonai baruch hu shemo, basru meyom leyom yeshuato. We'll turn now to page 132 at the very bottom, or Zaru. Or zaru ala tzadik, uleishrei lev simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik, uleishrei lev simcha. Simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, Vehodu lezecher kodsho. Simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, Vehodu lezecher kodsho. Turn now to the 98th Psalm on page 134 at the very top of the page. Zamru l'Adonai bechinor, בכינור בקול זמרה, בחצוצרות בקול שופר, הריעו לפני המלך אדוני, ירם הים ומלואו, תבל ויושבי בה, נהרות ימחאו כף יחד, הרים ירננו, לפני אדוני קיווה, לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, ועמים במישרים. ירם הים ומלואו, תבל ביושבי בה, נהרות ימחאו כף יחד, הרים ירננו. Excuse me. We're now on page 135, the last Hebrew paragraph in the middle of the page. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu Adonai Eloheinu vehishtachavu lehar kodsho. We'll turn now to page 136, the 29th Psalm for Friday, again page 136. Mizmor leDavid, Havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, Havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, Havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, Ishtachavu l'Adonai behadrat kodesh, Kol Adonai hamayim, El hakavod yirim, Adonai hamayim rabim, Adonai hamayim rabim, Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover harazim, Vaishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon, Vayarkidehem kemo hekel, Lebanon veSirion, kemo vehen reimim, kemo vehen reimim. Kol Adonai chotzev lahavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholel hayalot, Vayechesov yeharot, Uvechalo kulo mekavod, kulo mekavod, kulo mekavod. Adonai lama bo yashav, vayeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai hoz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. We'll turn now to Lechadodi on page 138. We'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs, and for the ninth, we'll stand and face the doors we walked through just a few moments ago. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Ishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet ve'litila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor haberacha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maaseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, ki va'orech umiori, uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alaich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Bohi v'shalom ateret ba'ala, gam mesimcha uvetzol toch emunei am segula, boi chala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Please be seated. We're now on page 140, just where the Hebrew indents in the middle of the page. Tzadik katama yifrach, keres bavanon yizke shetulim bevet Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva deshenim merananim yihu lehagin ki ashar Adonai tzuri velo ablatamu. We'll turn now to page 144, and we'll rise in body or spirit for the Chatzi Kaddish, again page 144, and we'll remain standing for the Baruch Hu on the next page. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach irutei b'yamlich malchutei, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם לעלמי העלמיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בהלמה ואמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. Please be seated. We'll turn now to page 149 and we'll read together in English toward the bottom of the page. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Umavir yom umevi laila umavdil beyom v'laila Adonai tzvaot shemo El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed baruch atah Adonai Amari v'arhavim. We'll turn now to page 150 and we'll read together in English toward the bottom of the page. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, והם נגי יומם ולילה, ועבדך תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, Adonai Echad. Please join me on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם המזוזות ביתך ובישעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי ויתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. We'll turn now to page 157. We'll read together in English toward the very top of the page. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land. The winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness. There is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. As we turn to page 158, Mi Chamocha, at the very top of the page. Yabai bye bim 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 bam, yabai bye bim bam, yabai bye bim 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 bam, yabai bye bim bam, yai bye ba 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 bye, yabai bye bim bam, yai bye ba 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 bye, yabai bye bim bam, mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar bakodesh. Norat hilot osef ele, Norat hilot osef ele, Yabai bai bim 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 bam, Yabai bai bim bam, Yabai bai bim 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 bam, Yabai bai bim bam, Yai bai ba 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 bai, Yabai bai bim bam. Yai bye 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 bim bam. Malachutecha ra'u vanecha, bokeam lifnei Moshe Miriam, zeli anu ve'amru, Adonai himloch leolam va'ed, v'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, ugolo miad chazak mimenu, baruch at Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Let there be love and understanding among us. Peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Hashkibenu is on the top of page 160. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom vehamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom vehamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Ushmor tzeteinu, uvoeinu, lechaim ulshalom, me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Yerushalayim. Turn to Vishamru on the top of page 162. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'atzot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam ein beini ubein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim vet haaretz uvayom hashevi Shabbat Shabbat va'inafash. Before we turn to the Amidah, and I appreciate, very, very good, everyone's ready to stand up. Just small reading before we begin, on top of page 163. It's one that I look at, but we don't often read, but it draws my eye week to week, and I think this week in particular. It says, "We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time." So you will take those words with you in whatever way you choose as we begin the Amidah together on page 164, and I'll ask us to rise in body or spirit, and we'll continue silently after we begin together, and as always, please go at your own pace. When you're finished at the end, if you're still standing, you may be seated. Oseh shalom mimromav, Uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yehoshvei Tevel. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We'll turn now to page 371 as we prepare to offer our Mishaberach, our healing prayer for this evening. We begin by thinking of those in our community and connected to our community in need of that healing tonight. We think of Bart, Allegra Himmel, Nicholas, Madeline Egelfeld, Rachel Bat Marsha, Sue Wartor, Abigail Blum, Kate Sherwood, Betsy Tepper, Aimee and Warren Cass, Rivka Bat Rachel, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sylvia Devora Bat Francis, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Spicer, David Kyle Klotman, Lorraine Davis, Kim Birnbaum, Deborah Block-Kroll, Sylvia Orrin, Rachel Bat Ora, Peretz Ben Shlomo, and Israel Ben Yitzchak. In addition to those names I just read, of course, we continue to pray for the communities of Los Angeles, and we want to give an opportunity, of course, to those in the room with us tonight. If you have additional names to add, we'll start on this side of the room as we always do, and then to this, and if you have names to share, please raise a hand.
Jody Manuel, Jackie Manuel, Donnie Heston, Julie Espinoza, Chris Hubbard, Linda Lanigan, Kelly Mulholland, and me.
Susie Hunt.
Of course, we invite our friends watching at home to add the names of your loved ones as well, and we'll join together on page 371 in the middle of the page as we offer our Mishaberach, our healing prayer. Mishaberach avoteinu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We offer now our prayer for Israel in time of war. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu. Our God and God of our ancestors, you know that the Jewish people are one nation with one heart, and now that heart is broken. O healer of broken hearts, binder of their wounds, be with our brothers and sisters who have been taken captive and with the families of the victims. Watch over the hostages, break their bonds, and bring them out from darkness to light. Proclaim release to the captives, liberation to the imprisoned. Comfort the families, bring them under the shelter of your wings. Bring complete healing of body and spirit to all of the wounded. Bind up our wounds and grant us healing. Tzur Yisrael v'goalo, rock and redeemer of the people Israel. Bless the state of Israel, the initial manifestation of our redemption. Shield it with your care, spread over it your shelter of peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Grace them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend us. Crown their efforts with victory. Bless the land with peace, its inhabitants with lasting joy. Shomer Yisrael, guardian of Israel. Strengthen and bless the defenders of Israel who stand guard on the land, in the air, and on the sea. May we see the promise of the psalmist realized. You turn my mourning into dancing, my sackcloth into robes of joy. God, protect, preserve, and restore peace and well-being to Israel, your people. And together we say, Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Where to begin? Where to begin? I think there are a number of places. There's more than one sermon here, certainly. but watching, again, a transition of power in a democracy is something that really should be celebrated, even when, right, our person doesn't win. The concept of it and the peaceful nature of it is something that historically has not existed in the world. But the shift in tone and tenor, the shift in policy and practice in a matter of minutes is striking. And a number of things that have already been done, a number of things to communities that I personally deeply care about, that I know that this temple community cares about, is deeply concerning to me. But what I want to focus on tonight actually is something that in an odd way felt personal by the nature of my profession. And that was the interaction between the Bishop of the Episcopal Church of Washington, D.C. area, Bishop Marianne Edgar Buddy, who delivered what in any estimation was a deeply meaningful and I think necessary sermon in a place in which many may have chosen to say nothing or to say something that adds up to nothing. And in particular, the response of the president to that sermon. And one of the first things I want to say, and this again speaking as a member of the clergy, you may have seen the response, may not have seen the response posted on Twitter, which at this point might as well be considered the White House press space. To refer to a bishop as a so-called bishop is simply unacceptable. I don't care about politics. I don't care about what position you come from. I don't even care about the substance of what she said. To become a bishop in any church, the Episcopal Church or the Catholic Church, means first and foremost that your own community elects you, and then a body of others on the highest level of the church confirm that position. One can like a person, dislike a person, appreciate their positions, angry with their positions, even feel insulted by the nature of a sermon. Those are all things that are grounds for acceptable space. Lord knows I have given my share of sermons in this space over the years that did not meet acceptability to some. I have received my fair share of emails in which I was called to task, sometimes accurately. To call a person who has achieved that status within their religious body into question is to question that church body itself. We would not accept such an act to take place to one of our rabbis under any circumstances. Even in the kindest words would be unacceptable. To see that, every single clergy person across the world should be horrified. That it come from the mouth of anybody should be horrifying, but to come from the mouth of the highest position in our country is simply unacceptable. I won't continue on from the rest of the nature of that response, but certainly was deeply troubling. I want to say that while that, again, I can't say that it's personal. I think lots of people felt similarly, but, you know, I want to, in the affirmative, say what a remarkable thing it is to see a person who, again, in that position, could have said nothing, could have said something, you know, to the effect of what I would describe as a parv sermon, right? Something that's neither here nor there, right? It's not milk or meat. You know, but to make that decision, the courage that it takes to speak, again, directly to the president of the country about something that the church body itself has opinions on, I think was quite remarkable and quite courageous. And it's a remarkable coincidence of timing that as we get to the Torah portion we will read tomorrow, as we are in this particular section of the Torah, I will poll the electorate, so to speak. Where are we, people, in the Torah readings? Do we know? Not to embarrass anybody. What book did we just begin reading? Exodus, okay? And at the very beginning of the Exodus story, we learn about what? What is taking place? Okay, last week, right, in Torah study, we talked extensively about Moses being called to this space, right? And what does he say? This is not a task for me. He looks for actually many opportunities to say, I'm not the one to deliver the message. If I were to deliver the message, it wouldn't be received. And sure enough, beginning this parsha is exactly what happens. And the first time that Moses goes to deliver God's message of freedom is not even to Pharaoh. It's to his own people. And his own people can't accept it. Okay, there is a brilliant Hebrew phrasing that describes Moshe as saying, I am aral safatayim, which literally means I am of uncircumcised lips. Okay, he's a person who cannot imagine the idea of speaking even to his own people, let alone to speaking to the most powerful person in the world. And yet in the end, time and time again, that is exactly what's expected of him. And his brother Aaron, and ultimately we know the end of the story, but this is the crux of it. This is the moment in which our people might still be, theoretically, right, enslaved in Egypt, if not for the ability to speak about fundamental values. And in the end, there's no way to disassociate the comments, the focus of her homily from politics, because the nature of our lives are politics. Okay? There's no way to talk about the things that she talked about without butting up against very real schisms within our identity. And I will be the first one to tell you that when it comes to, for example, matters of immigration, they're not simple matters. And they're not always, as much as we might wish that the world was a giant open hug, that everybody in the world, especially those running for their lives, would find a place to live here. I took a course actually in college, which was eye-opening to me. It was just the history of U.S. immigration. It's not our history. Okay, it's not our history. It's our aspiration in many cases, but it's not our history. We've had many moments in our times in which the doors have been closed, including to our own people. We know the repercussions of what happens when you're sent back home. Many people who never made it out of the camps simply because they were turned away at the door. But I know that it's a complicated matter. It's one in which there is nuance, in which there is place for legitimate argument and debate, places in which our system of governance allows for that debate to take place in sometimes civil manner and sometimes less civil manner. But what that sermon was focused on wasn't policy per se. It was a question of values, and the language that was used was one and very important word, which is about mercy. Right? Asking for mercy for people. Not for criminals, not for deadly people, but for children, for parents, for families, for people whose lives, make no question, are already being affected as we speak. Okay? In our communities, people that each of us know, who now, a week ago, could go anywhere and do anything, and now are afraid to leave their homes, are afraid to go to work, afraid to send their children to school. All because ultimately of the action of power. When she spoke from the depths of not just her own feeling, but of a tradition that she has studied for decades. A life that she had lived in a church, again, that represents millions of people in this country and other parts of the world. And a church, quite frankly, Episcopal Church is essentially the American form of the Church of England, which itself is in effect a similar church to the Catholic Church. It is not one actually that is historically known for liberalism. It's actually known much more for a conservative approach to many things. And as I said, this isn't a person giving a sermon in a tiny, church somewhere off this is the Bishop of Washington, D.C., and I believe 4 other counties. And if I looked it up, 86 different congregations and 10 different schools under her bishophood. To respond to that in the way in which it was responded, again, was not, I disagree with the things that are said, or I feel as the president these are things that our country must do. They were vitriolic, ad hominem personal attacks on a human being, which directly means that she is now receiving legitimate death threats. Right? A bishop of a major city in our country is receiving death threats because of a sermon. If that doesn't upset you, I don't care again about who you voted for or what your card says. If that doesn't upset you, that is a values-based concern. It's not a policy question. It is values. It is basic values. One of which being basic decency, basic human decency. Forget even for a second the person of the cloth or a person of station. It's no longer a question of that. What are we? Who are we meant to be? If this is ultimately the way we are going to behave towards the people that we are supposed to respect, it's deeply troubling to say the least. And it drew my attention, of course, to a very famous set of verses in our portion this week and also in other portions throughout the Torah, which talk about the nature of Pharaoh. And a number of instances in which God says, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart, in which Pharaoh refers to Pharaoh's self as a hardening of hearts. It's a lot of complicated stuff in there, things that, quite frankly, we'll unpack a little bit more tomorrow, pitch for Torah study, by the way, come to discuss. But one of the words that's used in Hebrew, because there are a number of them, is kabed, the root, kaf bet dalet. Now that root is actually a very interesting one. It is more often than used in the positive fashion. For those that may remember these important things up here that this represents, those little things called the Ten Commandments, we remember what one of the very first of them is. Okay, after we establish that God is God, one of the first things we're told is kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, to honor and to respect your father and your mother. And that word kavod is the same thing that we use, and although I feel terribly uncomfortable with it, there is a concept of kavod harav, right, of having respect and honoring your rabbi, your teacher. And I'm not asking you to do that for me. I'm simply pointing out that that is a rabbinic concept. And we take it even a step further when we especially show up to the burial for a funeral. To participate in the burial is referred to as kvod hamet, right, of honoring the dead who've passed, and also a next level of what's called chesed shalem, an act of loving kindness that is beyond anything else because it cannot be reciprocated. All of these are acts, again, of honoring. So it's strange when we find this root appearing and describing the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, because there are other words that would probably make a lot more sense. And one of the reasons why it appears in this case is that root can also refer to something that is heavy, something that has a weight to it. And one of the things that a number of rabbis, a number of commentators have said over the years, and they draw this from a midrash, is that kabed, when referring to Pharaoh in these moments, refers to something that happens to him, in which it's not just a question of a hardening. It's not a physical characteristic in that way. And it's not necessarily a heaviness, again, in the sense of a weight, but more that Pharaoh's anger, that his ego, that his drive to be dominant, and his frustration at having that dominance taken away leads him into a place of hardness, into a place in which he cannot conceive of, first of all, acknowledging a power greater than his. He can't conceive of the idea that he has done something unjust by imprisoning an entire group of people into enslavement. He can't simply acknowledge at a certain point that he's lost and that by losing, his people are suffering. He becomes fixated in himself, and his heaviness that weighs on his heart makes it impossible for him to make a different choice. He, in essence, because of his own actions, loses the free will that has been given to him. And so that heaviness, in the end, causes suffering again to him, to his household, to his people, to the Jewish people, the Israelites, and ultimately to his place in history. All ultimately because within himself, he can't see beyond the heaviness of his anger. He is trapped, in essence. And when I read again that response, that was the first thing I thought of, was a person, again, who is trapped within himself, and is trapped within a place of so much anger that they can't find a way to accept a even harsh critique. Okay, it's, again, very possible to have sat in that space, to feel very frustrated, very upset, very even personally attacked, and to respond in a different kind of way. And in the end, the entire country, the entire world is looking to our chosen leader to lead us. This is not leadership. And again, it doesn't matter to me if you voted for him, if you didn't vote for him, or what your political affiliation is. He is now the president of our country. Every single citizen of this country has a right and a responsibility to question when this behavior takes place. And it wasn't the only thing that happened this week, not even by a long shot. Okay? People within that orbit are now behaving in such a way in which jokes about the Holocaust are considered acceptable, in which we are seeing a discourse shift in a way that I am more troubled than I have been in a very long time. And I would be remiss if I got up here and spoke to you tonight, my community, with anything less than honesty. I'm not saying that everything, Lord knows, everything that comes out of my mouth is correct. And I expect, frankly, each and every one of you to call me to task when I say something that you have a problem with. Okay, when I go too far, maybe even tonight's sermon. Okay? I accept that as part of my responsibility as clergy, as we're a leader. But in the end, if our tradition tells us anything, if we read the book of Exodus, if we, in a few months, gathered together for our Seders, if we read that little piece that I added earlier in the service for those that were paying attention, right, that the Exodus is something that comes back upon us. I weep for us. My heart breaks for us. But I, at the same time, I'm not going to accept that that is the outcome. I believe that, there is action to be taken, but the primary action is to commit to the underlying values of what I think this country was founded upon, that successive generations have fought and died for, that each and every one of us is committed to, and to believe that we can be better than this. But we can't be better than this if we are complacent, if we're silent, if we're accepting of something, or we brush it off as nothing. I certainly couldn't stand by tonight and say, as I said, on a somewhat personal level, for a person I do not know, for a religion that is not mine, for a location that is far away from where I live. But if it didn't hit you personally, then you need to go back and reread these things. You need to watch again. And the one thing I will say, when Bishop Buddy was interviewed, she was asked at the end, right, one of the things that the president asked for was an apology. And, she wasn't without recognition that her words can cause harm, right? Schism. She didn't feel good about the idea that people were upset by it, let alone the president. Wasn't her intention when she gave it. But her exact words are, I don't think there is a need to apologize for a request for mercy. I don't think I can say more than that. But I hope and I pray and I will act. And I may from time to time need to use this space to call into question, again, words that can become acts, and acts that can become things that transform our country, our society, our communities, really to our specific community here in Sag Harbor, right, to the East End, in very real and very tangible and very, very damaging and dangerous kinds of ways. So I think we have to be prepared to have some tough conversations. I think we have to be prepared from time to time to say things out loud that we feel inside. And if I should say something in the coming years that pushes beyond your boundaries, I ask you, I beseech you, please push back on me. But know that whenever I speak on something that in broad strokes could be defined as politics, please know that that is not the word in my mind or in my heart when I speak about it. There's only one word that is in my heart and in my mind that leads me to open my mouth, and that word is Torah. That word is Torah. Because it's not just a scroll that we have within our ark, it is the essential teaching of what our people believe in, what our God expects of us, what our values dictate for us, and ultimately is embedded within the hope of the world that we hope to create for each other and together. So I ask of you both grace, and I ask of you also to be inspired, not necessarily by my words, but by the words of Bishop Buddy, that our world, our tradition, our religions, shared religions, are really value sets more than anything else. They are ethics that expect the highest behaviors from us. And what I have seen in this last week is not that. I hope we can do better. And I put myself in that place along with each and every one of us and along with the president himself. I expect us to do better, more than hope. So with that, I wish you certainly a heavy Shabbat Shalom, but a Shabbat in which I hope the peace of being together will, again, bring us comfort, solace, and inspire us to act. Shabbat Shalom. invite us now to rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 586 at the bottom of the page. Again, page 586, Aleinu L'Shabech. Aleinu L'Shabech Ladon HaKol Latet Gedula Leotzer Breshit Shelo Asanu Kegoye HaRatzot Velo Samhanu Kemishbechot HaAdama Shelo Sam Chelkenu Kahem Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam V'anachnu Korim Umishtachavim Umodim Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Page 591. V'nemar Haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu hieh Adonai echad Ushemo echad. Excuse me. I ask those in mourning and those observing yahrzeit to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. We think first of those who've passed in our community in recent months, and I'll just say very quickly for those, again, that knew Morris Kramer, Morris' funeral is on Sunday, so he's not yet on our Kaddish list. We'll begin saying Kaddish for him next week. Again, in our community in recent months, we're thinking of Heather Abrams, David Amanoff, Louise Crandall, Mal Daphner, Stephen Dickman, Judith Barry Emanuel, Sharon Lee Goldblatt, Barbara Goldfarb, Harry Heller, Barbara Kushner, Ann Lieber, Robert Lykoff, Jeffrey Miller, James Pappas, Danielle Lisa Rigg, William Speck, Harlan Spitz, Charles Spiropoulos, Ronald Seth Tempowski, Alan Stephen Weinstein, Ronald Weller, and Susan Wolfson. We also mark the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Beatrice Barak, George Berger, Solomon Cohen, Ethel Fagenbaum, Yale Gelman, Alice Grossman, Rose Grossman, George Katz, May Kelman, Dorothy Klein, Hannah Klein, Herman Klein, Joseph Krennick, Joel Margaretten, Fanny Meyer, Ruben Mondenschein, Michael Neustadler, Diana Oliphant, Millie Peskowitz, Mary Racklin, Abraham Riskin, Phil Rosenstein, Luis Rosenthal, Francis Suskind, Frida Tarlow, Peter Weinstein, Sonia Weiss, and Adrian Wool. In addition to those names that I just shared, if anyone is saying Kaddish for anyone else I'd like to mention. I invite the mourners to join with me on page 598, and if it's your custom to rise alongside them, you may do so at this time. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayichon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach la'alam u'li'almei almaya. V'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha barichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrumav v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Okay, so first I will invite us, of course, as soon as our service is done, to enjoy us for our Oneg Shabbat, and of course, to join us for services tomorrow morning beginning at 10 o'clock, followed by Kiddush and our Torah study as well. Also a reminder of our weekly Leiled Minyan on Sunday at 9:30. This again is Zoom only. This continues in response to the war in Israel. We also remind everyone that our next Marines Haven shelter is this coming Sunday, January 26th. You can look for a sign up in the Thursday newsletter as volunteers are still needed. Also a reminder that the Rosh Chodesh group will meet on Sunday at 2 o'clock. This is the annual Tu B'Shvat Seder, so please contact Ellen Ruby if you'd like to join the group. So it'll be here at the temple, or I believe on Zoom as well for those that can't make it. And then again, we'll be at 2 o'clock on Sunday. For those, again, that may have missed the information about Morris's funeral, it's taking place in the city, 12:15 at Plaza Chapel. I'm really very touched that one of his last requests was for me to be one of the speakers. Morris, I once said he collected synagogues like people collect baseball cards. He belonged to any number of them because he truly loved being Jewish. He loved synagogues. He loved all manner of things. And actually, I think thanks, Carl, that you pointed me in this direction. It is being live streamed. I can never guarantee, how that works, but my understanding is that it works pretty well. I think a second email went out this morning with that link, but if for any reason that didn't get to your mailbox, you can go to Plaza's website. It's listed in one of the things there and has a direct link. So again, that'll be 12:15 on Sunday. And his nephew actually is the one who is officiating the service itself, but I like to think that our little shul here will be quite well represented in that space. And, thinking back to my earliest experience, the first time I met Neil was in Morris's office. And I think actually was wearing that same vest in my memory. That's exact. I think you were still wearing that exact vest, It was, it's funny. It's the small details you remember, but I know this is something of an aside, but when I was coming out of rabbinical school and I was applying, and I had I think 14 or 15 different interviews in all different places all over the country, and of course you go into each one of these interviews and everybody's dressed very seriously, they have their suits and ties on and very intimidating, all these kinds of things. And I got to the interview a little early, and Neil was the only one in the room before Morris and Susie came in. And to sit down and just see somebody, comfortable, exactly as you were. We talked, and it was as if we'd known each other our whole lives. And I say that as a memory of Morris because, Morris and Neil, like this, right, trusted each other in that way. And it was no small thing to hire a student right out of school for this pulpit. And Morris was really, in many ways, the person that vouched for me. I knew him since I was a kid, actually. And, it's tough to lose your friends, for sure. But, a lot of you guys loved him. And some of you may not have any idea who I'm talking about, but just know, very special human being, and somebody who loved being Jewish, loved synagogues, loved all the various denominations of Judaism, loved Jewish music, just loved all sorts of things. So, anyway, hopefully we'll have a chance. Actually, I was saying to Neil, we're going to do something here as well at some point, just to make sure that we give some space for everybody to remember him. A few other things coming up this week. Nida Mitzvah, 10:30 on Monday. On Zoom. Very good. Hebrew school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Wednesday, it says we have B'nai Mitzvah class, but I just learned actually that it's a wonderful thing that our schools out here are closed for Lunar New Year, which, at first it struck me as surprising, but then I realized there was a time in which Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur were not holidays, right? They weren't given off. So in the same way that we appreciate that, my children don't have to have a missed day, for those that celebrate, that it should be their day, and we should enjoy that. So just anybody who may be in that B'nai Mitzvah class will contact you and let you know whether that's going to go forward. Also, a reminder that Rabbi Levin's virtual bereavement group will take place Wednesday evening from 6 to 7:30. So, with that, did I miss anything anybody can think of? Okay. Oh, yes. Yes. Who said that? Andrea? God bless you. I knew there was something. And it was going to drive me nuts. So a very lovely thing. We're trying to find ways to bring our Hebrew school families into connection with our Shabbat services. Not always the easiest thing to do, but we've got a very dedicated group of people who are working on it. We started out actually with a Saturday morning service, which was wonderful, but now we're going to do one on a Friday night as well, so that's next Friday night. So we're hoping that we'll have, a bunch of families and kids, and, might make some adjustments for our service a little bit, but our student cantor will be back with us, and I think, especially these days, it is wonderful to have things to look forward to, and, there's nothing in my estimation that makes a bad day go away more than seeing kids, so it just might be a little bit more raucous than normal, at least for a little while, so, I'm sure that all of you will indulge as it goes. So for our closing song this evening, I had it saved, and now I've okay, here's a lovely way to do it. Page 642, as we talk about values, and actually, in a way of connecting to Morris also. Morris gave me a copy of Pirkei Avot pretty early on from my time here. Pirkei Avot is a collection of what we call wisdom literature, sort of sometimes pithy, sometimes confusing statements of the sages but ones that if you grew up in a traditional household, sometimes are the main mechanism of teaching children how to behave. Principal ideas, value sets. The second reading down from the top, Al Shlosha Devarim, is actually part of a wider conversation in which various sages suggest the things that underpin the foundations of our existence. And so in this case, and I'm sad that it doesn't say, and I don't remember which, maybe it's Rabbi Akiva, maybe it's Rabbi Hillel, says, Al Shlosha Devarim ha'olam omed, that there are three things upon which the entire world stands. Al HaTorah, upon the Torah, Ve'al ha'avodah, upon the worship service, right, our experience together as we had tonight. Ve'al gemilut chasadim, upon loving deeds, deeds of kindness. And I think each of these things, again, stand upon themselves, but together they create the foundation. Okay? And if you take any one of them out of the equation, you don't have to be a master of physics to know. If you take, something that has 3 points and you take away one of them, it falls. So in our communities, right, we have to think about it in these terms. Each of these things matter and each of them draw together. And there's a simple but beautiful tune that goes along with this. Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Haolam Omed. Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Haolam Omed. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. We'll rise as we turn to page 123 for Kiddush. Again, page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mohorei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kinshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'ratzon inchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikrae kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim kivanu b'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava u'ratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom. You can try our improved challahs, some twisted challahs, I think we now get. Thanks very much to Josie for helping with that. Thank you very much.
You want a picture?
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Will may be right. I think these really are 2 braids.
You what, honey?
Normally a challah is 3 braids, and that's the reason why it looks strange to me. Is like it
And
looks
they're
like
flatter.
they're flatter,
They're
right?
usually like this.
It's interesting.
It's the way she bakes them.
No. And I don't think there's a. Well, in the end, it's a right or a wrong. I don't know. I think
Maybe
it's.
she don't put enough yeast.
I don't know.
Makes it rise.
I don't know. Yeah, we could move that. Thank you, John.
You're welcome, honey.
My thanks to you, Neil. My thanks to you.